All right. It is 10:33. So let's jump into the lesson. Um, just like structure of today's lesson is going to be like pretty open for y'all. So we're going to start in a breakout room, kind of like discussing these warm up questions. I'm going to like take your questions and then talk about the form for syntax a little bit based on what's in the lesson plan. And then I'm going to kind of like let you go and see if you can implement this in setlist. So that's what to expect. And yeah, so I think just to start in breakout rooms, we'll take like, I don't know, 4 minutes or so for this. I've got y'all in pairs and then one group of three. Just talk through these warm up questions. So what does it look like right now in set list when we are creating and editing artists? And then yeah, how are we telling the forms about what path we want them to submit to, and then the verb, the HTTP verb that is going to be used, and then how are we connecting those things to the objects that we are updating or creating. All right, so let's take a couple minutes on this, and then we'll come back and see what we have.
Oh, what up, bro?
All right, I think we've got everybody back. Anything come up based on those warm-up questions that you wanted to share out that's like not clear or that you had questions about? Looks like Travis has a question.
Yeah, and this might, if this is too involved of a question, just let me know. But I started posing my own questions to Tyler because I feel like either I don't understand the routes while trying to answer the warm up questions. I don't understand how the routes work, or maybe we haven't been taught it yet. But like, so when, like for example, the update in our set list, we're updating on artist name. Let's say um, it's patch, right? That's the
Could be
yeah.
patch or put.
So patch is like I was reading some in Wikipedia. Patch is a request. So it's literally when you go through a patch route, you're requesting from the server a change in the database.
You are, say that one more time.
When you go through a patch route, you're requesting a change from, or you're requesting a change in the server from the server in the database, like the artist table.
Yes, I would think of it like based on the artist resource. Like you are supplying like, a set of changes, like generally attributes, right, that are going to change based on that verb and routing to your update action. And patch is always going to be attached to some resource. So some model that has a database table.
So patch is it's saying I've got I've got a resource here, and I want to give you some user input, and whatever that user input is according to the attribute that's in the form, I want you to update the actual object in the database with that.
Correct.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anything else come up that y'all chatted about that you want to talk about? Danny, go ahead.
So I was trying to read the question, and maybe it's just me not understanding, but
like, so I was looking at the underscore partial form, and then also the edit.html. And maybe I just don't understand what the question is asking. The first question, like, how do we tell our forms the path and verb it should use? Like, I mean, it looks like we're putting it in as a key value pair in the actual edit. Where we're telling the path that the key should be some sort of route and the method value should be some sort of action.
Some sort of HTTP verb is like more correct verbiage of that, because our action is generally like related to whatever our method is in the controller. So
okay, and then that underscore form partial is just basically the template where it's like fill in the blanks with the actual edit HTML. I guess. I don't know. I guess I didn't really understand what the questions were asking anyway, so I'll just patiently wait while the answers come.
yeah, it was just asking like, how are we assigning what path that this form tag should have, and what method it should have. And so if we look at our partial here, it's kind of, I think you might be overthinking this one, just because like it's kind of like clearly here that we're assigning them as a local over here when we render it, and then we're passing those locals over to this form tag. But that's how it knows, like, hey, here's the path to go to. Here's the method that we want to use. And this kind of leads me into this Form 4 lesson. It's basically going to do some of this work for you based on the resource and based on whether it's an edit or whether it's a new, or I should say, whether it's an edit or whether it's a create. And I'm going to get into that. But yeah, let's hear from Brett.
Yeah, me and Daniel are just looking at form where and how they're saying form where might replace form 4 coming up. So I was just wondering what you have to say about that.
Form with.
Or form with, yeah, sorry.
I don't know about form with syntax, to be honest. I haven't used it. So if that's a thing that's coming down the pipe, then yeah, that means that the Rails powers that be have decided that there's a new pattern that they like better. But generally what happens with these things is you get the new pattern and all the old patterns, right? Like we get form tag, we get form 4. Now they're going to say like form with is actually the one that we use by default. And it's probably a number of things. They either think it's more readable, or it's less code, or it's more dynamic, right? And so all of those things, or one of those things, could be true. Yeah. Cool. I thought I saw another hand, but I don't see it anymore, and I don't remember whose it was.
It was me, Tim. I just had a question about that form with as well.
Okay.
Just wondering, will they get rid of form 4 form tag, or will they just basically, here's a new one, you can use it if you want to?
I think like in general, what happens, like I'm not gonna say 100%, but in general, what happens is you get all of them, and now the convention moves to form with is like the one that they want. But the other thing about that is that might only be on Rails 6 and Rails 5. And so if you're at a company that's on Rails 4, they don't even get that, because now Rails is like not updating 4 anymore, but like you're at the company that has 4. So that's why it's always like, this is like a constant conversation that we have as a backend team of like, should we just upgrade to the newest thing? And I am always on the side of no, because basically the companies that you go to, like if they're a company that is a year old, they might be on Rails 6. If they're a company that's 10 years old and they've been on Rails, like they're someone like Ibotta, I bet Ibotta's on like 4, maybe 5, because of the amount of effort and work that would have to go into upgrading is a lot. And so that's why it's good to know the really to know all the syntaxes is best, but knowing the older syntaxes is probably, in my opinion, going to be more useful for you. Cool. Angela, did I answer your question?
I guess I want to share kind of like what we thought about the second question, because I wasn't too sure about it. So what is the connection between the form and the object? And one of the things we said was just like maybe the params. So that's the thing that connects the two. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Because in our controller, that's basically what we're getting from our view that has everything that we want to either update or create based on, you know, what came over from that form. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, so let's look at some form 4 syntax. It's very similar to like the form tag syntax. And I can kind of like put these things next to each other so you can see both. Kind of want to like this.
Yeah, share your screen, Tim.
Am I not sharing? Sorry, I thought I was.
You are-
My bad.
Come on, Tim.
My bad. So yeah, so it's similar here, but the difference is like the form 4 is going to be taking an object as an argument. Like, even though we're not using parentheses here, you could. And it needs an object as an argument here. And then we also have this do end syntax where now all of my fields, right, are attached to my f, which is attached to my object. All right, so it's attached to my block variable f, which is just, this could be anything, but convention says we do it as f. And now my text field tag over here is like an f.text field. All right, so it's like slightly different, and it's going to be like, it's not a tag anymore, but it's all attached basically to this object. All right, and we could do something like this where if we had like a dog form for a new dog, then we could have, you know, this dog.new, but we don't want to do that because we never want our view to reach into our database, right? That breaks some of our MVC like convention patterns of what does what. And if we're going to break like MVC patterns, then why the hell do we have any patterns anyway? Why do we have rules? Why do we have structure? Like, if we're going to break it, that doesn't make sense, right? So we could do this. This would work because this is an object, but that's not necessarily what we want to do. We would want to pass this into our new form like this so that we have an instance variable to work with that came from our controller, because only our controller is able to reach into our view and to our database, right? Not our view. We don't want our view reaching all the way to our database. Yeah, if we kind of scroll down, the difference between the dog.new is literally we add @dog equals dog.new or assigned to dog.new in our controller, and then we pass in our @dog as our instance variable, which is holding our object. All right, and so this binds this model of our dog to our form here in a way that is dynamic, in a way that Rails can do some things kind of like that are abstracted away from you by default, based on whether this is a new or based on whether this is an edit. All right. Questions on what I've said so far?
Not necessarily on what you said so far, but that the F in the pipes, is that referencing form?
It's referencing like the form object, and I would encourage you to like throw a pry in, right? Like you can throw a pry in anywhere in the do end and look at F, right? And like look at like what that looks like and what all that has available to it, because that's going to give you the best understanding. Yeah, Angela, go ahead.
You said that this form will know what to do, whether we are creating a new object or editing an object. So in theory, we could reuse this form for at least for those two actions. Where would we save it? Like, because right now it's saved in new.html. Would it be a partial, like a smarter partial?
Ideally, it's a partial. Yeah, ideally you use it as a partial, and it's slightly different than this partial, but you can see, like, if we look at this form partial, it's a form tag. The difference would be I would use the form for syntax here, and I would pass it, I would have a block variable here, right? And then this would be form for, and then path would actually not be the path, right? Path would need to be my object, right? So I would have to change this over here to something like object, and then this would just be my artist. So something like this. And then I would have to change this to be object. Right, and so now I've turned this into a form for, but it's still dynamic. And I don't even think I don't think I would need these two things, because based on where this is called in the edit, it's going to populate some of that for me and know how to do this for me.
Nice. For some reason, like when I read the title of this lesson, I thought the form for would also know which attributes belong to which object. So it would like create the label tag and the text field tag for us, just like a bunch. And maybe you could tell it which ones not to create. So I'm just kind of sad that it doesn't do that.
I feel like, so here's the thing, it could do that because it does know about the attributes of the object, but it gives you the power to tell it which attributes you want to display and which attributes you want to be shown to the user and populated or not. So yeah, you're on the right track on that. And yeah, it probably could do that, but like then you wouldn't have as much control of like what you show versus what you don't.
Yeah.
Brett, go ahead.
So use form for if you have a model, and form tag if you don't have a model, underlying model, I guess. When would be an example of when you don't have a model for a form?
That's a good question. It could be like a search, right? Like you could have like a form that takes in some search parameters and then queries the database based on those parameters, right? And that could be like, you could be searching across multiple objects. You could be searching across, yeah, a lot of different things, but like there are scenarios, like
Okay.
I don't think we've gotten to a ton of them, but like, yeah, they're out there.
Okay. So always use form for if you have a model, essentially.
I always avoid the word always, because they're in programming, like there's a lot of opinions and like not a ton of facts. So this is basically the syntax that we would want you to use. This is a syntax we want you to know about and use. And yeah, the idea is that it binds it to a model. So this is for, forms with models.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Cool. So, and one thing to note here is if I change this to form for, right? Like, let's just make this. Like if I change this to form for over here, remember, this is not a label tag anymore. It's a f.label. So I would need to like go change that too, because now it's working dynamically off of this form object that I've created here in my block variable. Cool. Yeah, so here are the big things. Like here's the meat and potatoes of the lesson, I will say. It's like right here, what this can do based on whether the object has an ID or not when you pass it to the form. All right. So if I did the dog.new like I did above here, like this is not a dog.create, right? It's a new, so it hasn't saved to the database yet. So the ID is nil, right? At this point, when @dog gets passed over to this form, it might have a ton of attributes, but if ID is nil, then form for is going to treat it like it's a new, which is how it should be treated, right? So if it doesn't have an ID, like by default, form for is going to say, hey, this is going to be a post. It's going to be a post to dogs over here, right? It starts out empty because we don't have any attributes filled in yet for this dog. And the submit button by default is going to be create dog. All right, so this is like the dynamic stuff that you're getting with Form 4 based on the object that you pass it. All right, and then yeah, the action method that it's going to go to by default is going to be create. All right, so it's going to be very RESTful by default. And then if the object does have an ID, right, so now it's going to default to a put verb, and it's going to go to somewhere like dog's ID over here dynamically. Now, another great thing, this form is pre-populated with the fields that already exist from the database. All right, so now in that edit view, all of your form is filled, your form's filled with everything that already exists in the database that you could possibly want to edit. It's going to go to an update action, and it's going to default, by default, the button is going to say update dog. All right, so these are the things that kind of like Form 4 is doing for you under the hood. Now, this is not to say that you can't also pass, you know, this isn't to also say that you can't do things like this, right? Like I can override it with some arguments the same way I could in form tag. I can override my HTTP method here. I can give it like probably a couple of other like helpers here. Like if I wanted to give it the path and like have it had a different path, I could give it that here as an argument. So you still have the ability to, you know, make this form be how you want it to be, but by default, it's going to treat it a certain way. Questions on this? This is like the Form 4, what could I say? Form 4 mac and cheese, the Form 4 turkey and gravy, all the good stuff about the Form 4.
So Tim, I tried to like edit the partial using Form 4 with object and changed my edit to object and just had the add artist ID like you did. And they commented out the method and the button text. But then I get like this undefined method model name.
Yep. So I'm not going to help out right now on the implementation because that's what I want y'all to work through for like the rest of the lesson, basically. Yeah, I want y'all to kind of dig in and see what you can figure out. Okay, strong params with Form 4. This is the other kind of like big difference that you have to remember to do. And it's basically like, hey, whereas before basically you got all the key value pairs and params just by default. Now you need to require your object because now it's a nested hash nested under your specific object. So in this case, it would be dog. So I would have to say, hey, for this form coming in, I need the dog key to be there. And then within that nested hash, I'm going to permit these attributes for my dog object. So this is the big like kind of like switch, whereas form tag, it's a bunch of key value pairs. Now it is a nested hash where the key is the object, so the key is the dog, and then the value is those key value pairs, you know, attribute pointing at the actual value, attribute name pointing at the actual value. All right, so now we have a nested hash and we have to like tell our params, our strong params about the nesting. What else? Honestly, I think that's it, unless y'all have questions. Nico, go ahead.
Quick question on that. When we change the params, will that affect the form tag? When, the one we have with form tag?
Yeah.
We have to upgrade everything?
Yeah, so like this will only work with a Form 4, right? Because like it won't, the form tag will not be requiring dog as a key. So it would basically, this syntax would not work with form tag. This would only work with form 4. So if you have two params, kind of, or if you have two types of forms, you have the form tag and the form 4, what you could do is create some logic within the dog params that says like, hey, if the key of dog is here are my dog params. If it is not here, then here are my form tag params for dog. So you can kind of go about it a couple different ways. It's probably easiest to just use one or the other. Yeah,
Thank you.
for sure. All right, let's take a break, and then we will jump into doing some things. Let's come back at 11:11.
Thank you, 1111.
All right, it's 11:11, 11:12 actually. So let's jump back into it. So yeah, so what I want y'all to do for the rest of the time before lunch is see if you can update all your forms in SetList to use a form 4 instead of a form tag. And then also see if you can keep that partial that's in there. And yeah, these CFUs, see if you can, I think it's better if you can answer them yourself, and then if you cannot, then post them in code help, and I will answer them if there's any that are left unanswered and that you all don't answer. What I'm gonna do is say that you all can do the rest of this practice however you want. You can do it in your study hall. You can do it on your own. You can do it in a breakout group in here. It's kind of up to you what you want to do, and I'm fine with like whatever you want to do. But what I'm going to do is I'll put up like a PR with some of this implemented so that you can see the code of like how I would go about doing this, and I'll put that up later on today. But yeah, I saw Luke has a question. What's up?
This may be part of the actual exercise, but my question is whether or not we are updating the underscore form HTML, or not just the underscore, but every other one of them as well.
Yeah, so I want you to try to update all of them. It doesn't matter to me where you start, but if I do like a Command Shift F and then do like a form tag here in SetList, so Command Shift F searches across the entire project, I can see like where all my form tags exist, and now it's like up to me to go and like implement them. And the great thing is we have tests, right? So we can run our tests to verify if we're doing this right.
So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Yeah, Christopher, go ahead.
Hey, do we have a up-to-date repo to pull down?
I think I like removed like the line resources dogs, but that could have only been like on mine. But you can do a git pull and like it should be up to date with if you do a git pull from main, git pull origin main, I don't think much has changed, like almost nothing. But like it shouldn't affect what you all need to do here unless you don't have the stuff from the partials lesson that was like added to the repo. In that case, it'll pull down the partial and you'll have the partial to work with.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it should be good to go. Whether you already have it or you just do a git pull origin main, then you're good to go. Other questions? All right, cool. So yeah, once again, expectation is that you work on this for the next 45 minutes. If you want to stay on the call and work with whoever was in your breakout room, then actually that's false because some people might want to leave, some people might want to stay. So I'll recreate the breakout rooms based on who stays and stays on the call, and so you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to work whole group study hall in your study hall, like more than welcome to do that if that's more effective, or if you want to work on your own. Like this is very much whatever is the best choice for your learning. I want y'all to do. All right, so with that, I will say see you later. You have PD at 1, and then you're back with me at 2 for SQL and active record.
PD's on our own time, correct?
Yeah, PD is, I don't know who's teaching PD, but it's not me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ted.
Yep. Okay, cool. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of y'all. 5 of y'all. All right, cool. So what I'll do is it'll be one group of 3, one group of 2, and yeah, y'all can work through it together. Let me just recreate these. Blah, da, da. Recreate all rooms. Cool. That's not what I want. Sorry. 2 rooms. Recreate all rooms. Great. All right. Y'all are set. I'm going to open these up and I'll leave the call on, but I'm not going to like bring you back or anything. I'll probably just close the call around 12.